Job, chapter 38, verse 34. We talked last week about, we finished up with the topic, the plan of salvation and the gospel as written in the stars. Remember, God was talking to Job, and he was talking to him, can you loose the bands of Orion? Remember that? We talked about the constellations having been named way before the scientific method was pretty much invented. So now we also talked about God talking about the jet stream and the Gulf Stream, right? By the way, did I say they were broken? Did I say they were broken last week? Anybody remember saying? I said the jet stream, which is the major weather conveyance system in the atmosphere, the channel, also the Gulf Stream, which is an even more major weather conveyance system out of the Gulf that comes up through the Atlantic and into the east, and it comes up around. How many know what's going on in Europe right now with weather? And how many know what's going on here with weather? It's because the Gulf Stream is broken, and the jet stream ain't doing too pretty either. The way they had thought the Gulf Stream was breaking was supposed to make the northern hemisphere even more cold, especially up here, and the southern hemisphere more hot over time. Now, I had heard this a couple of years ago, and it was working that way. How severe, how winter's starting to get again here, until this year. Something is real. No, they were getting colder. We were getting a lot of snow the last few years. It was freezing here. Remember how cold it was most of the time? It was bone chilling, even for us up here. So anyway, we talked about the paths of light. Remember how God had said to Job, can you conduct light? Because he was telling Job that light does nothing standing still. Light can only be light when it's radiating. Like any radiation, it does nothing if it's standing still, right? There's no such thing as light if photons are standing still. So he talked about the channels of light, which really mean light travels in wavelengths. And we talked about modern science. Oh, really? Modern science proving God, because the most focused use of light and wavelengths and absolute coherency is the laser. If light didn't work the way God described it to Job, we wouldn't have the laser. We wouldn't understand how all these things in different bandwidths or wavelengths of light work, right? So God is telling us more about, and I wanted to make this clear, and then we're going to talk about this next one, which is God's total control and command over the Earth's ecological and biological systems. Okay, and that's where we're headed now. Remember we talked about the outside stuff, how the universe works, right? Remember I even read you from the book of Enoch, where Enoch even says how the sun and the moon keep faith with each other. We talked about how God said to Job, can you map the sun in its course? We talked about that. So we're moving. It seems God is moving the conversation from the universe, our local heavens, how things operate, into the local atmosphere, which we just talked about last week, how things operate here. And now it looks like we're moving into terra firma, aren't we? And as the conversation rolls forward, you're going to see we're also going to move to now other dimensions. And one of them, actually, well, we don't know, we can say one of them, is in the earth. I mean, we talked about Hades, right? We talked about Abraham's bosom. We talked about dimensions in the earth, the holding pen for the angels that have really, really sinned. Did you hear of Apollyon, Abaddon? Who's going to be loosed out of the pit? And how about the angels that come out of the Euphrates? Anybody ever read that one? Okay, so that's out of the earth. There's interdimensional. He's going to talk about that. So God seems to be focusing us in, through this book, of how he designed and how things work from the universe in and into the earth. That's where we're headed. We talked about the gospel written in the stars, and now we're moving closer. We talked about the earth and its environs. Control over the earth's echo and biological systems. So that's the topic here. Job chapter 38 and verse 34 to 41. I'm going to read you from the Amplified Version. Job, Mike, put your name here. Can you lift your voice to the clouds so that an abundance of waters may cover you? Can you send lightnings that may go and say to you, here we are? Who has put wisdom in the inward parts or in the dark clouds? Or who has given understanding to the mind or the meteor? What he's saying here, now we're talking about the reason why it's clarified in the Amplified Version. I didn't put those words in there. It's clarified in the Amplified Version. Okay? And the reason why that is because we have to make the distinction. That's why I'm compartmentalizing these topics into topics, right? This is not just a mishmash of 60 questions that God just happened to blurt out. There's an organization here. So everything in the Bible, you have to take within context. The context here seems to be very strongly the Earth's ecological and biological systems in general. So if that's the case, he's not going to start talking about the inward parts of man or the mind of man, right? So, and obviously the Amplified Version proves that. So you got to stick with the context, okay? Basically what he's asking Job here is, can you control the clouds of rain? Can you control when it rains, when it doesn't? Can you control the lightnings, that exactly where they're going to strike? Can you command them to say, lightning, where are you? And it responds at your command saying, here I am. Well, Job, obviously the answer is no, and he's probably trembling. So he says in verse 37, who can number the clouds by wisdom? Or who can pour out the water bottles of heaven? When heat has caused the dust to run into a mass and the clods to cleave fast together, Job, can you hunt the prey for the lion? Or satisfy the appetite of the young lions? You see what he's saying here? We were just talking about ecological systems, weren't we? Lightnings, clouds, meteors, all these things that are causing and affecting the ecological system, which must be kept in balance for life as we know it and as God planned it to exist on earth. Now we're moving closer, it seems, to terra firma, and he's actually saying now, can you hunt the prey for the lion, Job? Can you feed the lion? Who takes care of these animals? You see the context here? God is showing himself as the great caretaker. And that's why it struck me when I was doing this study, more than ever, the true miracles are not these by fiat calling down fire and doing all those things. To me, knowing God's power, those are just parlor tricks. Now, I'm not in any way, shape, or form minimizing anything God does. But my point is God could do all of this by fiat. He does not need weather systems. He does not need all of the intricate balances of all of the systems of the universe and the mass in the universe and all of the elements in the universe to be exact and run like clockwork. Does he need to do that? To keep life here? To create beings that are specially made to be in his image? Did he need all of this to create the angels? No. I want you to keep your mind on the fact that life itself is the miracle. Because life for God is not a miracle, is it? He existed forever. Creating life is the miracle. And further, creating the capability or having the capability to bring these systems into effect to maintain it. This is the glory of God. Or one of the things of the glory of God. This is what I think he's showing us here. This is the mind and the heart and the point of view of God. Just watch how he designed these things. That's what I want you to think about. Right here, he is proving to us by these questions to Job and how they're ordered, in my point of view, just what it says in the book of Romans and it says in Psalms. The heavens declare the glory of God. Look at the creation. No one has an excuse for not seeing the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. The great I Am has done all this, and if anybody can look at any of this and say it works, but not because of you, by accident or other means, they're fools. This shows it right here. So this is what we study this book for, I think. Not to understand Job so much. We do that enough. But we notice in this book, notice we skipped over a lot of what Job said, didn't we? But we also looked very carefully at Job, who he was, his relationship with God before God really reveals himself so powerfully. Remember, and you've heard this in the sermon, I think a couple weeks ago, and you know this in your own life. And if you haven't had such a hard trial yet, or you know someone who has, you will. Everybody does. God reveals himself most stringently, most importantly, most closely with you and I when we are in the midst of suffering, of helplessness, right? And most of the time when we're doing well, that's why it's so easy to kind of forget God. Because when we're doing well, he's providing us the ability to do well, but he is close, but he doesn't have to be as close to us. Do you know what I'm saying? I don't want to make this sound wrong. He's always close to us. But yes, it's like a proximity kind of thing, if you will. I hope you understand what I'm saying.
We don't depend on him so much.
That's right. And he doesn't, right, exactly.
So, than him.
That's right. And we don't say, God, who are you? I want to understand you so much when we're doing okay. It's just human nature.
Kind of like a parent-child relationship.
Yeah, that's right, right.
When you're real young, you don't go very far.
Mm-hmm.
You go for everything.
That's right. And a lot of times, though, in the parent-child relationship, they don't appreciate the parent, the fact that they're totally reliant on them. So when a child's got its bottle, when the child's not crying because it's satisfied, I mean, there's nothing more selfish than a child. I hate to say it. It's true, isn't it? That's why Rachel says God made him so cute so you don't smash him. She said that, not me. She said it. Well, I was paraphrasing. I want to make her look like the bad guy for once. I used to say, okay, so we have another vote. Sold.
How do you explain not smashing them when they're teenagers?
You know? And then, Ken, you got me on that one. Yes, Nanette.
And what does all the teenagers say in here? We have 3 of them.
Yeah, good point. Well, one of them just said, wow. For lack of a better term.
Then they move away.
Yeah, and then you
have
want...
a problem.
That's right. That's,
Take
see?
it back.
Yeah, but yours is in his 20s now.
Yeah.
But so what? But he's not coming
That's
back.
like with God, we move away.
Oh, yeah, right.
Things are
That's right.
Going our way.
Yeah.
So it's
Good. So everybody made the point.
Run home.
That's right. Run home. That's right. Like the prodigal son, right? When they realize that you have nothing left, your great God shows you his compassion. But you notice that actually that's a very good point, because the father in the story of the prodigal son, it's not that he didn't have the means or the servants or the wherewithal to go get his son. He let him go. And he stayed back. And he says, I'm here. And he let his son get to the point where he wanted dad, and then realized how important and how capable and how able dad was. Thank you very much. That works. That works the best. Job, can you provide for the lion? Now, you notice he uses a lion here. It's like, if God said to me, Mike, can you provide for a bird? Well, yeah, sure. Of course. Can you provide for your dog? Well, of course, I have to. The dog can't do anything for itself. Especially, you see this little rat Pomeranian we have? And she has like 3 teeth left. So, it's not hard to think. That's right. So it's not hard to think who's dependent on who for provision, right? But so God didn't say, look at the Pomeranian. It does not have to sow or reap. It can't. But the lion is a very symbol of self-proficiency. The ability to hunt, the ability to trap, the ability to take care of itself. And none can go up against the lion. The lion has very few predators in this world. And so God uses him, in my opinion, as this example, because if the lion would be a symbol of the epitome of self-provision, or provision by a human being which is noticeably weaker than a lion, you wouldn't dare try to give a lion its prey. Let him get his own prey. I'll just stand back and watch you eat that thing, right? So I think that's what he's showing you here. Job 39, verse 39. Can you hunt the prey for the lion or satisfy the appetite of the young lions when they crouch in their dens or lie in wait in their hiding place? Who provides for the raven its prey when its young ones cry to God and wonder about the lack of food? So these questions in verses 32 to 41 conclude this chapter 38. And chapter 38 talks about, again, the meteorological events with human wisdom and understanding. It tries to map in how much of understanding do you have of meteorological events? How much understanding, Job, do you have of the weather systems? Do you master any of it? And further, do you provide all sustenance for even the most powerful of animals? Because if you can, Job, then you can speak to me. So you see God's point of view here, right? God has a very, very great heart of compassion for us because he sent Jesus Christ. That sacrifice, that all-consuming, all-paying sacrifice reached backward in time, didn't it, to Job? You see, we think that Christ came at the right time, and he did. But the shock waves, you know how you drop a pebble in a pond and the shock waves go, the resonance rolls out backward and forward? If we look at a time as a timeline, and we do, and just at the crux of time, Jesus Christ came, we look at that because that's tangible for us. He came as a human being on such and such a date and such a time, and he was here for such an amount of years, and then he went back home, and with the promise of coming back. But it was at that point, the ripple effects from that single point in time reach backward in time as well as reach forward in time. So Job is already saved. Matter of fact, the one talking to him here is whom? The Word. And it also says in Scripture that by the Word everything was made, correct? And not one thing that was made without him making it, correct? So here's the God of the Old Testament, who is the one who became, talking to Job in such a way that we don't look at Jesus in the way we know him when he became as a human being, when he came here as the God of the Old Testament, who's a lot more forward, who can seem to people as a lot more pushy, a lot more angry. He's not, because God does not change. We just said that. Well, we're seeing a major, that's why I said, our thrust here is to look at God's heart, his mind, his character, and his point of view. And it's the same God that was doing all of these things in the Old Testament that created all of this, that keeps it in balance. It's the same one that became Jesus Christ, who died for us. So Job is already saved here because he believes. We talked about those who before Christ died, who had confidence in the coming Messiah, right? Even Jesus himself said, Moses spoke about me, right? So this is the point. Basically, God seems to be saying, just as humans cannot control the weather, neither can humans control the terrestrial aspects of the functioning of the earth. From the physical realm down to animal behavior, humanity is limited in its understanding and capabilities to manipulate these, and God's providence operates far beyond human understanding. That's what we're supposed to get out of this. And Job's like, I think I get it. Through this very purposeful and systematic, and I want you to remember that word, this is a systematic line of questioning. I hope you see that now. Because when I started looking at some old articles from a couple of different sources about the book of Job, it hit me. This is a systematic revelation of God in a way of how he, his mind is very organized. He's not a capricious God. He's very organized. And if you look at these questions, they start out from the universe and they come right down and into the earth and back out. So it's amazing to me, and that's why I split these topics up, split these questions into topics, and it worked very nicely. A deeper study of this chapter offers the reward of deeper understanding of God's mind, his point of view, and his heart toward his creation and the creatures thereon. Okay? The next topic for the set of questions is the intricate design and functions of Earth's animal kingdom. Now we're really close to terra firma, aren't we? We had a little bit of an introduction to it by God moving from Job, do you understand the clouds? Can you control the lightning? And he asked about, can you get the prey for the lion? Can you provide offer? And now he's going to move further into the animal kingdom. Job chapter 39, verses 1 through 8. Again, I'm reading from the Amplified Version. Job, I love this start. Job, gird your loins, Job. Do you know the time when the wild goats of the rock bring forth their young? Or do you observe when the hinds are giving birth? Do you attend all of this, Job? Can you see every animal function that's going on the planet? Can you number the months that they carry their offspring? Or do you know the time when they are delivered? When they bow themselves, bring forth their young ones, and cast out their pains? Their young ones become strong. They grow up in the open field, and they go forth and return not to them. Who has sent out the wild donkey, giving him his freedom? Or who has loosed the bands of the swift donkey by which his tame brother is bound? He, the shy, the swift-footed, and the untamable. Can you tame the untamable, Job? Do you time when they give birth? Do you know what is going on with every single animal and how they function? Verse 6. Whose home have I made the wilderness, and the salt land his dwelling place? God's saying some of these animals, like these goats and so forth that he's talking about here, they live in the wilderness. When we went to Israel, we saw these ibex. Now, some of them were blessed enough to live near the park, the national park where we parked the bus before we went over to the caves. And they're eating out of garbage cans, and people, they're not even that scared of human beings because they know they're going to get something, right? So, but most of them live up in the crags of the rocks. It's like we saw some of them climbing. It's like, how do they climb these things? In the desert, where do they get all this food? How do they flourish? Who feeds their young? Well, God is saying here, they live in the wilderness. He says in verse 6, whose home I have made the wilderness. If you saw En-Gedi in the desert area down there by the Dead Sea, that's not even wilderness. It's desert. Sometimes I used to think as wilderness is just the woods, It's like, okay, maybe you can forage and try not to eat a poison mushroom. If I were left out in the woods to survive myself, I would be like Job. I'd have all these boils. And then I'd be like Nebuchadnezzar with the claws and the talons and like a wild animal. And then I would probably die because I'd eat a poison mushroom because I don't know what to eat. Okay? Let me think about that one. I gotta generate a good one. That's good. I like it. That's actually very good. Nah, but you know what? I don't eat her mushrooms though, because I never know what she's giving me. I like that. That was good. Yeah. Oh, you're supposed to be looking at me when you said that. Anyway, verse 7. Can you eat the mushrooms, Job, without dying of... No. He scorns the tumult of the city and hears not the shoutings of the taskmaster, which means these animals. They don't care about cities. They don't care about being around people. They don't care about being around those who could provide for them. They live in the wilderness, and they're designed with a feeble mind where they can't even provide for themselves. They don't worry about it, do they? Just like Jesus said, look at the sparrows. And aren't you more important than they? They neither sow nor reap, and yet God provides for them. He knows when one single bird drops to the ground, and they don't have a mind to provide for themselves anyway. They just go get the worm, which God already created for them to get, and gave them talons and to be able to scratch and dig. And I look at the chickens we have. It's like, boy, they're stupid. And yet they survive. Sometimes they don't, but
Until your dinner.
yeah, until the skunk comes. Yeah, right. Well, no, we don't eat them. We get their eggs, but sometimes the skunk will get them. You know, it's like God's got to provide for the skunk too. So I don't know where the balance of nature is. And they're nasty, those skunks. They just eat their brains. You know. Yeah, that's all they do. They'll leave the rest of the body. It's like, you know what? The good white meat is here. Why you just eat? Maybe that's why the skunks don't go to Kentucky Fried Chicken. Maybe that's it. See, you're right. So Janet's right. So God provides you. You get the brain. You get the. See, you ever see what? See your chickens? Yeah, you take good care of them. That's why you ever see the Methodists, the flags. I know. You ever see the flags? Huh?
Look at this huge body of meat, and they're eating this tiny
Then little brain, because their brains ain't that big either. But it's a delicacy. You ever see these flags over these Methodist churches? It says, all are welcome at God's table. Well, here you get the white meat, you get the brain, you see some of the things these animals eat. Entrails, the chicken feet. Well, but they're Chinese people eat the chicken feet. Okay, how about verse 8? The range of mountains is his pasture, and he searches after every green thing, which means he hunts for anything to eat. Those who live in the desert, those animals that are also ranging in the mountain. So here God is challenging Job to answer if he understands the continuous and mindful support that is required to maintain all of the most intricate and minute details of the animal kingdom. Job is asked concerning the mating and gestation habits of even the most common animals known to him at that time. All animals function according to their own built-in special instruction, and I put that in quotes when I wrote it, according to their kind. Remember in Genesis, God said he created this animal and this bird and this things, and what did he say was how to maintain these animals going forward? They must be fruitful, they must reproduce. But what specific instruction did he give his creation as he created it? That's correct. Each must only procreate after its own kind. And what, of course, has been happening since then? We've talked about that, I'll say ad nauseum in this class. I'm not going to get into it now. But the reason why is because it very strongly seems, and this makes it more clear in my point of view, that God gives each animal a spirit of the animal. That's why a cat acts like a cat and never like a cow. And a cow never acts like a dog. And a chicken is so stupid it can only act like a chicken. But there is no creature that has the capability of art, of science, of love, of hate, of questioning its own existence, of knowing the concept of time, right? That's why people say dogs are so loyal sometimes they'll sit by their dead master's body. That's not loyalty. I mean, it is, but it's not real loyalty. But the fact is they don't understand the passage of time. They don't understand that that person is dead. They don't understand anything. That's my point. But there is one special animal walking this planet who does. Who is that? A human being. Why? Because we are made in God's image, in his likeness. Never downplay your capabilities as a human being and your emotions and your ability to reason, although some of us better than others. You can look at me and say, well, go in the wilderness, young man. But I want you to think of that because this is what he's saying here. Job, can you look at the earth and every single life form I've not only formed, You ever hear the old engineering adage, form follows function? And when you reverse that equation, you may get something beautiful, but it doesn't work very well. More today than any other day. But if you look at form follows function and you look at every single animal and how it's built, it is purpose built for its own functions that God has assigned it to do, and how it provides for itself and its young, how it's also used when its time is to be used to eat or to be thrown into the fire or whatever it's supposed to do, right? Everything is purpose built, and then the spirit of that animal is infused into that animal so tightly that we look at a cat and say, wow, it acts like a cat, because the body, the physiology, the biology, the way it's got the claws and all the things that a cat does, the spirit of the cat is so perfect for it, it seems like they're inseparable. That's why the spirit of man is so inseparable from the function of the human body that people just look at human beings and say, well, you just happened by accident. No, that's why your spirit is separate from your body. And that's why the only spirit that God created which can have an interface with his spirit is the human being, the spirit in man. It says even in Scripture, a cow can't know anything about a man because the cow does not have a spirit in man. I forget where it says that, but it does say that. That's the point here. Animal instinct is not accidental, but created according to a purpose for a particular animal species. God watches and maintains it all, animal by animal, birth by birth, incident by incident. Job, can you even begin to do this? Just when you and I think that we got it down, just think about all the things that we cannot do, that are done every day for us and around us. And bless our Creator for it. The next topic, the administration of the non-domestic animal kingdom. The non-domestic animal kingdom. Now, you know the dogs, cats, so forth. Now, even chickens are domestic animals. Well, there are many animals that are not domestic, aren't there? So let's talk about, well, let's see what God has to say. And his mastery and his purpose for non-domesticated animals. Job 39, chapter 39, verse 9. Amplified version again. Will the wild ox be willing to serve you, Job, or remain beside your manger? Job, can you bind the wild ox with a harness to plow in the furrow? Or will he harrow the furrows for you? Will he willingly be your slave like other animals that will do work? A horse, they can be domesticated. You know, as I'm saying, animals that can be harnessed, their power, because the way God built them and created their spirits, can be used by man very easily and harnessed. Non-domesticated animals, on the other hand, have their own way of doing things, don't they? That's what he's saying here. Verse 11. Will you trust him because his strength is great, or to him will you leave your labor? Will you depend upon him to bring home your seed and gather the grain of your threshing floor? And in the Amplified Version it says, who, Job, was the author of this strange variance in the disposition of animals so alike in appearance? Job, was it you? Did you design the intricate differences in all of these animals so that they do exactly what I programmed to do? In questions 47 to 52, Job is asked if he can dominate or domesticate the non-domestic animal kingdom. God is asking Job, could he control and harness any of these animals for use in his service as a draft animal or any other service animal? If you can, Job, let's hear it now, and let's see you try. Try to harness a lion. Try to harness this wild ox and make him plow your field for you, Job. Even a horse you can break, right? So it will serve you. You cannot take most of the other animals and cannot do that. It will not work. The next topic, maintenance of the intricate details of all life on planet Earth. Maintenance of the intricate details of all life on planet Earth. Job chapter 39, verse 13. The wings of the ostrich wave proudly, but are they the pinions and plumage of love? Now listen, you know he was saying here, right? The ostrich has great wings and it flaps around very proudly, but is there any love in this animal? Remember what I just said about human beings? You and I have the capability of love and hate, of joy. So listen to what he's saying here. Listen to what he's saying. Why is he bringing the topic of love into an ostrich? Think about what he's saying, but I just want you to understand this is the context of this next set of questions here. Maintenance of all the intricate details. Animals don't even care, if you think about it, about their young, do they? Right? You ever see a sea turtle? Goes and buries its egg and walks away. Never to see him again, doesn't care. Someone's got to care for these animals. You see an animal drop a an animal, a baby on the ground, and it does some functions like it will nurse and so forth, but after that, it's on its own. The wings of the ostrich wave proudly, but are they the pinions and plumage of love? The ostrich, now here's the point. The ostrich leaves her eggs on the ground and warms them in the dust, forgetting that a foot may crush them or that a wild beast may trample them. There's no real understanding of even how to care for the babies here. But human beings, we love our children, don't we? We know how to care for them. And when human beings go awry, then you can see when love goes awry and we don't care for our children and abort them and abandon them and abuse them, right? Well, animals can do neither. Can an animal love its young? Well, not really. It's saying here that it forgets it. It doesn't even mindful that it's got to be careful the way you lay an egg, right? It's fragile. But can an animal also, at the same time, have the capability of abusing its young? It cannot. Because it doesn't have love. It doesn't understand. It cannot think. That's what he's saying here. Verse 16. She is hardened against her young ones as though they were not hers. Her labor is in vain because she has no sense of danger for her unborn brood. For God, now listen to this. That's why this is no accident. For God has deprived her of wisdom, neither has he imparted to her understanding. Yet, when she lifts herself up in flight, so swift is she that she can laugh to scorn the horse and the rider. This is a very powerful bird, but it has no conscience. Yet God takes care of those young. God starts this line of questioning with birds of the walker types that do not fly. God speaks from the standpoint of the rather odd and cold behavior and the unique plumage of the ostrich. This ostrich abandons its eggs, yet they are still warmed by the sun and eventually do hatch, with no thanks to the mother. As in other natural systems and behaviors, these animals display the ability to sustain themselves in spite of themselves, all in ways difficult for us as humans to understand. I'd say very difficult for Job to understand too, and that's why God's posing these questions to him. The emphasis here in these questions is the Lord's perfect design, which manifests in many wonderful and even very strange ways. You've seen some quirkiness in some animals. That's why we have zoos. Okay, next topic. The purpose-driven design in each life form on earth. The purpose-driven design in each life form on earth. God continues his questioning using one of his more powerful and useful animal creations, the horse. Michelle smiled at that because she's an equestrian. Is that how you say equestrian? She's equine in nature. Can you tame a horse?
Is that a fat joke?
You used to say it when you're riding a horse. Do I look fat on this? The horse says, no, but get off. That's what you say to me. All right. Verse 39 and verse 19. Have you given the horse his might, Job? Have you clothed his neck with quivering and a shaking mane? Was it you, Job, who made him to leap like a locust? The majesty of his snorting nostrils is terrible. He paws in the valley and exults in his strength. He goes out to meet the weapons of armed men. What was the major mode of transportation in those days for the armies? Verse 22. He mocks at fear and is not dismayed or terrified. Neither does he turn back in battle from the sword. The quiver rattles upon him as do the glittering spear and the lance of his rider. He seems in running to devour the ground with fierceness and rage. Neither can he stand still at the sound of the war trumpet. Horses are built to be majestic in battle. They are strong. They are good workers. After you break them, right? After we tame them. But they are pretty wild on their own, and they are fearless, aren't they? Except Rochelle says that they get spooked pretty easily. But when they're trained properly and you put blinders on them and you equip them, they are very efficient weapons of war. That's what God is saying here. In questions 55 to 57, the Lord describes the qualities of the horse, which he praises as an especially noble creation. I would agree with that. Horse is the most beautiful, beautiful being. Its musculature, its frame, the way it comports itself. He asked Job point blank, can you create anything like this animal, Job? The message to Job is to never forget that it is only God in his sovereignty who can create, considering even the greatest of details. And God can also enjoy and marvel at his own creation. You see how God talks about his creations here. These are not ho-hum to God. And you know that God never lets anything go to waste. His designs are beautiful and he enjoys them. And that's what he wants for us. Right? Okay. Continuing verse 39, chapter 39, verse 26. God moves his questioning now from the horse to the glorious and efficient, very deadfully efficient birds of prey. Verse 26. Is it by your wisdom, Job, that the hawk soars and stretches her wings toward the south as winter approaches? Does the eagle mount up at your command, Job, and make his nest on a high and inaccessible place because of you, because of your command, Job? On the cliff he dwells and remains securely, upon the point of the rock in the stronghold. From there he spies out the prey, and his eyes see it afar off. His young ones suck up blood, and where the slain are, there he is. The questions to Job encompassing the hawk and the eagle as prime examples of the design of birds of prey make a fitting close to the questions on God showing his purpose-driven design for each life on the planet Earth. And that's why I named the topic this, okay? Questions 58 through 59, just what we just read right now, would deal with two species who are hunters and scavengers that swoop over the Earth's battlefields. Now, you don't have to turn there. I want to read you two examples in Scripture where these birds of prey are used in God's hands for battle. Just listen. Luke 17 and 37. Then they asked him, Jesus, where, Lord? He said to them, wherever the dead body is, there will be the vultures or eagles. There they will be gathered together. Ezekiel 39. Now, a couple weeks ago, I asked you to do yourselves a good favor. I introduced the topic of Ezekiel 38 for those who did not know it, about the battle of Gog and Magog. I gave you all of the details in context of current events about all of the nations ready to slip the noose and tighten it around Israel. If you did not know that, and you weren't here, it's not in my notes, but you know what's going on in the world there, right? If you read Ezekiel 38, and I challenge you to continue and read Ezekiel 39, I hope you did that, because that's a very graphic, painful detail of what those invading armies are going to experience when God deals with them through the governors of Judah, which I read you in Zechariah 12. By the way, I looked that up again. The governors are not really only the leaders, but the governors actually is a translation of the Hebrew word eluf, which means brigadier or brigadier general, specifically showing that the governors, the leaders of the IDF, God will empower the army, the IDF, the current day IDF, to have such strength and awe that they will slaughter the enemy, as is said in Ezekiel 39. I'm just amplifying that for you, folks. Watch Israel. Pray for her. But God will make them a burning torch of fire when the enemies come in thinking that they've got them beat. Okay, Ezekiel 39, chapter 39, 17 through 20, in the Amplified Version. And you, son of man, thus says the Lord God, say to the birds of prey. Now, this is in the context of God now defeating the armies that have invaded Israel, right? Russia, Iran, Libya, Sudan, right? I named you all those, Turkey. Okay, modern day, this hasn't happened yet. This is what's going to happen soon. So he's saying here, and you, son of man, or Ezekiel, thus says the Lord God, say to the birds of prey of every sort and to every beast of the field, assemble yourselves and come. Gather from every side to the sacrificial feast that I am preparing for you, even a great sacrificial feast on the mountains of Israel, at which you may eat flesh and drink blood. We're going to finish up here. I'm just going to finish this topic and then we'll be done. Next week we'll go to the next topic. Verse 18. You shall eat the flesh of the mighty and drink the blood of the princes of the earth, of rams, of lambs, of goats, and of bullocks, all of them fatlings of Bashan, which is east of the Jordan. And you shall eat till you are filled, and drink blood till you are drunk at the sacrificial feast, which I, God, am preparing for you. And you shall be filled at my table with horses and riders, with mighty men, and with soldiers of every kind, says the Lord God. I want to finish up with Revelation 19:19. Ezekiel 39, verses 17 through 20. Revelation 19:19, we'll wrap up with this. Then I saw the beast, which is the Antichrist. Now, Revelation 19 is a very special chapter because it's the chapter within which Jesus Christ comes back. Then I saw the beast and the kings of the earth, and their armies gathered together to make war against the rider on the horse and his army. The battle of? That's right. Now we saw that place. We saw that place from on high. Let me tell you, Napoleon was right. That is quite the place for a battle. But the beast was captured, and with him the false prophet who had performed the miraculous signs on his behalf. With these signs he had deluded those who had received the mark of the beast and worshipped his image. The two of them were thrown alive into the fiery lake of burning sulfur, the first two inhabitants of hell, which is not yet populated. Okay, Satan's not among them. Remember that. The beast and the false prophet. Verse 21 now, Revelation 19. The rest of them were killed with the sword that came out of the mouth of the rider on the horse, and all the birds gorged themselves on their flesh. Birds of prey, folks. God has prepared them to be murderers. God has prepared them to be efficient hunters and killers. And God will use them in these times of trouble. Just like back in the beginning, or not the beginning, but the beginning of this series of questions when God says, Job, have you seen the storehouses of the hail, Job, that I have reserved for what? The day of the Lord. You see how he is thrusting, this whole timeline is thrust as across the timeline here. He has set up birds of prey. He has set up his creation to effect the whole timeline, and it will all take part in the timeline. So next week we're going to pick up with God's command. Now, summing this up, God's command of all actions that take place on earth. Are you convinced that God controls everything? Are you fearful that he controls nothing or little? Are you fearful at all? Or are you considering now that he has not such a good grip on your life? In want or plenty? In want or plenty? In want or plenty? If you got that email I gave you this week, and I'll print it for you, Ben, and I'll print you a copy, Diane, you better get a grip. You know it here. I have given a copy of that email to Pastor Joel. And I just said, just consider this and you do with it what you will. I just had a burden on my heart not only to spend that time writing those two emails, to detail and give you links and give you scripture to not only warn you, but to comfort you. Okay? You all know where we are. Make no mistake about it. This is a very different time and place. It's never been like this before, and it will never be like this again. We are approaching that time. And I'm not just ringing the alarm bells, folks. Our pastors need to be aware of it. We all need to be aware of it because there are going to be a lot of hurting people. And I'm not saying the earthquake that's surely to come, or like in the 95+% range, is going to come on or within a few days of March 22nd. You keep your eye out. But I'm not saying that that is going to be the thing that's going to affect us any more directly than the Japanese earthquake did at Fukushima last year, or the Chile earthquake, or the Christchurch, New Zealand earthquake. You want me to count them all for you? But it may. Will you be ready for anything or nothing? Because God is. That's what I think God is having us. You know how long it takes to do this class? He's having us in the book of Job right now to master his glory, to understand his control, his design. And in this book, we not only see God telling Job, I have everything down to the molecule planned, down to the subatomic particle planned, Job, and everything's been laid out from beginning to end. From beginning before there was sin to end where I have to destroy most things and then renew everything. And I will use what I've created to do it. Do not be afraid. I want to encourage you. Be ready. You know, you talk like this, people are going to sometimes think, they look at you like you have two heads. And I sometimes have to put my spare head at home so they don't look at me like I got two heads. But be ready. Because even if it doesn't happen, something can happen to you. I could get hit by a bus in New York. Well, no, I won't be in New York City, so there won't be any buses. I'll be in Long Island this week. I could get hit by a car. My own car could roll over me. I don't know. I'm just telling you. Be ready.